Good evening, Patelco. It is so good to be back with you after a summer break to talk all things college financing. My name is Michelle Enriquez. I am standing in for the Veronica Dangerfield, who is off traveling and enjoying a much deserved time off. But no fret, she's going to be back here on August 28th at this same time talking about all things pre-retirement and what we should be thinking about pre-retirement. And she's going to be joined by one of her favorite people here at Patelco, a longtime licensed financial advisor, Jay Long. You are not going to want to miss their conversation. It's going to be a mix of mindset for retirement plus a lot of great expertise from longtime advisor Jay Long. So that's August 28th. Veronica Dangerfield will be back here at 5:30 to do a pre-retirement webinar, and I'm sure she's going to tell you all about her travels in Egypt right now. I'm pretty excited about tonight because we have never covered the topic of college financing, and if you're like me with small children or maybe even exploring continuing education yourself, you probably have a lot of questions that we want to tackle in tonight's webinar. Also really timely with financial aid season coming up upon us very quickly. So we're really excited about the topic tonight. But also, if you're unfamiliar with Balance, who are our guest presenters tonight, I have been working in credit unions nearly 20 years and have been working and partnering alongside Balance, who are formerly the Credit Counseling Agency of San Francisco. They are a local nonprofit financial wellness agency and an amazing resource for our community, amazing partner to Patelco in the way of financial wellness and counseling delivery, as well as financial education. And equally as awesome as Balance is our guest presenter, LauRae Upchurch. She is based out of Virginia and is a former credit union person herself. She has a wealth of knowledge in the space of financial education and just an amazing person to work with. So I'm going to read you off her full bio. She's a financial educator at Balance, as I mentioned, has over a decade of experience in adult education, and has distinguished herself by winning several consecutive credit union awards for financial education in the state of Virginia. So I'll welcome her in just a bit, but just a few housekeeping items for tonight. We will be raffling off 3 e-gift cards for one of our participants today, so thank you for joining us. We have a ton of information to get through tonight, so we have disabled the Q&A and chat, but we welcome you to email questions to us at webinars@patelco.org. I'll dump that email address in the chat here in a minute, but again, if you have questions following, feel free to email us at webinars@patelco.org with questions. If you have suggestions for future webinars, if you have a question about products and services for Patelco, you feel free to email us at that web email address also. So I think that's it. I think we're ready to roll. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to LauRae Upchurch, Balance's financial educator. LauRae, take it away.
Michelle, thank you so much for that warm introduction and welcome Patelco Credit Union. I'm so glad to be here speaking with you this evening. Now, I just want to address the huge elephant in the room, which is no, I am not Veronica, and those shoes I know are so huge to fill. And the likelihood of me filling them, honestly, is probably unlikely. But I do have a little flair, a little style of my own when it comes to presenting. I do like to have fun. I do have some previous experience working in the community college space teaching. So something you're going to learn from me as I'm kind of going through this is that I need to make sure that students aren't falling asleep. And the way that you do that is that you ask questions. So, Michelle, if we can go ahead and launch our first poll question. And that question is, well, I want to kind of get to know who's here. And so my question for you is, how would you describe your attendance today? Would you say that you yourself, you are a student? And of course, we're all lifelong students, but perhaps you are a student, a high school student, perhaps. Maybe you are a parent of a high school student entering college. And I think the poll is going to come up shortly.
Sorry, LauRae, the poll was up, so I'm going to go ahead and show the results.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you guys for going ahead and answering the poll question. So essentially what happens is I like to know who I'm speaking to. So for the most part, when I am presenting College Financing 101, I'm talking to parents, parents who have a child who is entering college very soon. So it looks like 28% of you are parents of a high school student who will be entering college really soon. Let's see, 32% you are a parent or a student entering college. And college is more down the way. So 2 or more years, and that's good, especially when we talk about some of the vehicles for saving and being able to pay for college. 21% said you are a current college student. Welcome. So glad that you can be here. 13% says that you are a parent of a current college student. So you've done some of this already and you want to learn more as you're still constantly going through it. And then a smaller percentage said that you are a high school student yourself. And I like to applaud the 7% of you who said that I'm a high school student, because I have to tell you, as a high school student, I had no interest in learning any of this information. As valuable and as important as it is, my gosh, it would have been good for both myself and my parents to know all about financing college. And so the 7% of you who said you are currently in high school, good for you. I'm so glad that you can be here. So let's talk about who should pay for college. Now, I want you to take a second and think about this. Should parents pay for college? Should the child pay for college? Or do you think it should be a combination of both? Now, depending on your beliefs, you might say that parents are solely responsible for paying for their children's education. If it's a clear expectation of yours that your child is to go further their education, then you should expect to also provide the tools so that they are able to do it, right? Some of us are of that belief, but some might believe that the child should be responsible. They're 18 or almost 18, so it's time for them to learn about adulthood, be an adult, and do whatever is necessary for them to get their education paid for. And it could be that of you believe that it's a little bit of combination of both, not just all up to the parent and not just all up to the child. The child pays for doing things like, well, making good grades can turn into earning scholarships and maybe part-time jobs and things like that. And of course, signing for loans. We're going to talk about that shortly. The parents have their part they take care of. There are important needs for attending college. So there might be responsibilities on both the parent and the child. With that being said, I'll go ahead and post another poll question. And this question is, what do you think is the most important factor when choosing a college? When it comes to college, what do you think is the most important factor? Do you think you should be mostly concerned with how much the tuition is per semester, or scholarship opportunity? Scholarships are available, where that college is located, and it's located close to home. I know some of you parents kids to be close. Or is it the academic reputation of that college? You want your kid to go to a school that has a great academic reputation because you believe it's going to translate into some success afterwards in the long run. So go ahead and vote. And Michelle, if you see that we have a large percentage percentage, of votes in this poll, then we can go ahead and close it and
We'll
see
give it
the results.
just another second here.
Okay.
We've got a lot of participation, which is great. And we're coming
Yes.
up on just about 90 responses out of 120. So we're going to share the results.
Oh, nice. Yay. So I love to see the results here. Academic reputation, that is somewhat surprising to me. Okay, so 33% of you said academic reputation is important. 27% said how much it costs, the tuition costs. 22% said those scholarship opportunities. We're going to base our decisions on how much scholarship. Hey, I don't blame you. I understand. 10%, I don't think about any of these things. 8% of you said location is also an important factor, and the most important factors. Thanks again for vote. So college education, it can vary. And tuition, well, I don't have to tell you that it can get crazy. It can be astronomical. But if I told you there were ways that you can cost of college, would you be interested? I hope so, because one way is for your child to attend a public school, specifically a public in-state college, because those are generally more affordable than a private school and most out-of-state schools, because of course you wouldn't have to pay that out-of-state tuition. Another thing you could do or consider is to live off campus opposed to on campus, because that might be a cost saving measure. Now, the cost of rent and groceries, that can be less than what a college or university charges for room and book, especially if you're able to snag a couple roommates to split the cost of rent. Now, I also know, depending on location, that might not be a viable option. It actually might cost you way more if you are off campus. I love this one. Doing your first 2 years of at a community college and transferring to a 4-year college, that's another way that you can save a lot of money. So as Michelle mentioned, I live in the state of Virginia, and Virginia has what's called a guarantee program for graduates of its community college systems. So basically what happens is if you meet the requirements to graduate from a community college in Virginia, then it gives you guaranteed admissions to any participating state university. Okay? Now, what I've learned is California has a very similar program that might be looking into. And the state also participates in a program for students who are interested in attending an HBCU. And HBCU is Historic Black College or University. So just very quickly, because I want to make you get this, I'm all about resources. So I'm just toggling over to that website very quickly. The website is CCC, it's 4 C's, cccco.edu. Okay. And this is for California community colleges. And it just talks about the guarantee program that is offered in this California. And it also mentions, look over here on the right, the Black colleges and universities, that program pathway to that program from the community colleges in California. So that might be something worth looking into, as doing a community college for 2 years. Definitely save you money. The tuition expenses are going to be far less at a community college than that of a university. The next one is taking and acing advanced placement courses in high school, because that can open up an opportunity to get you some college credit while you're still in high school, and of course not having to pay for that course. Also, it's not listed here, but enrolling early in college. So let's say you have a child who does want to attend a 4-year university, but while they're in high school, they can take a core class or two. For me, and this was many years ago, but for me, that core class was English 105 and I think it was US history. So I was able to take those 2 classes while I was in high school. I paid the community college rate. And when I went off to my 4-year university, I came in with 6 credit hours. Okay. So that's another really good option. Another item that is not listed here, and actually it's just kind of coming to me as we're talking, is what's called CLEP. Have you guys heard of that? With CLEP, it means that the student can earn credit, but they don't have to spend the time or the money taking the course. They call, like, you CLEP out of this class. So you can register for a CLEP exam in a bunch of different subjects. And if you score high enough on that exam, then the college or university basically says you have met the requirements to pass this course, so you don't have to take the course. Okay. And then you can your exam scores will be accepted, and that's how you get your credit. I think that's a really good option. Look into this. Now, I want to give you an example of clipping out of a course. Okay. So this is a good timely one too. Katie Ledecky. Katie Ledecky is an Olympic gold medalist, lots of them, so many of them that I can't even count. Let's say she is entering college this year and her curriculum required a PE course of swimming. Now, do you think Katie Ledecky, an Olympic swimmer, needs to take a swimming course in college, regardless of how great that course is? Well, the answer is she has the experience to be able to kind of test out or clip out of a course that way. So that's just an example. When I was teaching for the community colleges systems here, I remember a story of a woman who she was actually a part of the civil rights movement. And she had gone back to school, was taking some classes, and she was taking a course that was, I think, specific, very specific to civil rights. And because she lived it, so she had lived experience, I think she was also like held a position or was like a member, a part of the movement. She was able to, by writing a paper, clip out of that course. So she didn't have to take that class. So just think that of those different options, again, all ways that you can lower the cost of college. Now let's talk vehicles that you can use to save. And first of all, it is never too early to start saving and maximizing the power of compound interest. If your kiddos are like mine, 2 and 4 years old, then it's not too early. And even if you didn't start when your child was born, perhaps you just started thinking about this as they entered high school, guess what? It's not too late to start. There are so many ways to save money for a child's higher education, and some of them have tax advantages. So you are not necessarily restricted to one vehicle. You can use several of these all at the same time. And if you're not sure where you want to put your money, this is where I tell you to consult with a financial advisor, because sometimes I think that people will tell you, consult a financial advisor. And you're like, yeah, but I don't know the first question to ask when I do consult with said advisor. What I like to say is a lot of what we're going to discuss tonight is going to help you with formulating the right questions. Okay. So likely, like, I'm not a financial advisor. And even if I was, I would not be able to advise you in that way. So it's best for you to put yourself in a position where you know the right or the right questions so that you can find the right answer. So if you have pen and paper nearby, grab it, jot down some questions that you might be having, or look at the notes section and maybe your phones, start typing up questions as they kind of come, because we're going to talk about a bunch of different savings vehicles. And we're going to start with custodial accounts. So when you save or save and invest in an account created for the benefit of a minor, you can do that in what's called a custodial account, where you, the adult, is the custodian. These accounts will allow you to transfer money, you can transfer property, and you can do it to a minor's account without the expense of establishing a trust. And just in case if you're not familiar, a trust is basically like a third party situation where it allows you to be the trustee, and of course your kid or children will be the beneficiary or beneficiaries, and the third party will hold on to those assets. So you don't need a trust. Well, I shouldn't say you don't need a trust. If you want a trust, you can have a trust. But if you use a custodial account, then that account will kind of act as that third party. Okay. What you should know is that they can be opened at most financial institutions. Fortunately, that there are no income limitations or contribution ceilings, and the withdrawals are not restricted to higher education use. Some of these accounts I'm going to go over in a sec. The funds, if not used for higher education, then there's going to be some penalties and definitely some taxation going on. At the age of either 18, 21, or 25, that money is automatically shifted to the child, who then can now have complete control over those assets. Now, I gave you 3 different ages because it definitely depends on the state. The state determines when those funds are transferred over to the child. And because things are forever changing, I decided not to give you what California's current law is for transferring funds over the age for transferring funds to children. Another thing to keep in mind is that since the child is technically the owner of the assets, then when you're applying for financial aid, we're going to talk about that a little bit. When you get that financial aid award package, you will have to, or the funds will have to be taken into consideration when the student aid index is determined. And a student aid index is just basically a calculation, and it determines how much support that your child is eligible for based on, of course, how the family is contributing to education need based, basically. All right, so we talked about custodial accounts. Let's talk about the Coverdell Education Savings Account, because it is another great vehicle. In it, the earnings will grow tax-free, and the contributions made towards are not tax deductible, but the funds can be withdrawn tax-free as long, and this is a very important aspect of this product, as long as you use the funds for qualified education costs. What are qualified education costs? Well, tuition, very high on the list, things like books, fees, equipment, and other related expenses as it relates to the education of the child. There are many investment options available, and you can choose different stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and cash equivalents like CDs. If the account is owned by the parents and the child is a dependent student. Now, just very quickly, I'm gonna try not to get into the weeds of this, but when your child enters into college, they will be, for financial aid purposes, have to be either a dependent or independent. If you are the parent, then likely your child is a dependent student. There are very strict guidelines for when a child can be declared an independent student, like being emancipated, or like it's a lot of things. And for the most part, the majority of children who are entering college, who are, rising seniors entering to their freshman year of college, they are all going in as dependent students when they have, their parents like you guys. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, it's on studentaid.gov, which is a site that I'm going to reference a ton here. Okay, so what was I saying about that? Yes. So if you, it's important because if your child is entering as a dependent student, then it's considered a parental asset, and it'll have a small effect on the student aid index. But when funds are considered to be the students, the dependent students, then it has a larger effect on the overall student aid index. Okay. I hope I'm not convoluted and giving you guys too much information. I do have a way of sometimes getting too deep on certain areas, but I just want to make sure you have an understanding and I'm not just saying words to you. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the amount that you can contribute each year. Well, with a covered L, it is restricted. And if you are a high earner, and I can't give you a dollar amount for being a high earner, but I can tell you if you go to the IRS's website, it'll help you learn more about the restrictions. But if you are a high earner, you might not be eligible to participate in a covered L ESA. All right. Funds must be used before the child reaches age 30. If the child passes the age 30, you can convert those funds over to a different family member who was under the age of 30. And you may have to pay income taxes and a 10% penalty if that beneficiary, the child, advances past the age of 30. So you definitely want to make a decision about those funds if you find yourself in that situation. Last thing, ESAs can be used to cover both public and private schools, and you can pay for primary education, secondary, and higher education. So K through 12 and college. So of course, you want to reach out to a financial advisor to learn a bit more about ESAs. Now let's talk 529s. 529s are one of my favorite things. 529s come in two different varieties. You have the college savings plan. It's offered by individual states. The plan manager chooses the investments, and the one good thing about 529s is that people don't realize this, but you can invest in any state's plan. So if you guys are in the state of California, you don't necessarily have to invest in California's 529 plan. It could be that you want, you've heard about these Vanguard 529s, and there are people say really good things about them. I recently learned that Vanguard is in the state of Nevada. I mostly know because I have one. So my investment is actually in a Nevada 529 plan. So it's a really good idea for you to do some comparison and contrasting. Again, if you have a financial advisor, this is one of those questions you want to ask, like, hey, where should I open up this 529? There's so many options. The lady on the webinar told me that there were two types, and it's just too much information. I'm overloaded. What should I do? Okay, so that might be a place that you want to start. Now, when it comes to 529s, some states offer a tax deduction for contributing to them. It's always a good idea to look into your state to see if you can get some type of tax deduction. Unfortunately, I can tell you that California does not offer a state tax deduction for its state's college 529 plans. Okay. Let's talk prepaid tuition plans. Now, if someone would have told my younger mom that, hey, there's this prepaid tuition 529 plan, and the way it works is you can lock in tuition for when young LauRae goes to college, you can lock that in now. So basically, you're going to pay today's tuition rates instead of when she goes off to college many years from now. That's probably a plan you want to invest in. It is a great plan if you want to learn more about it. It is called the prepaid tuition plan. It is intended for in-state public education. You might be able to use it for some private colleges and out-of-state public schools, but they might give you the coverage that is not as favorable if you were in state. There are no income taxes on earnings or withdrawals, as long, just like the Coverdale, as long as you're using those funds for qualified education expenses. Now, a question that I get very frequently when it comes to 529s. Well, what if we don't use the money? What if I save up all this money for my kid and he or she gets a scholarship and full ride? We don't need any of the money. What about it? What can we do? Okay, so the great news is what I like to call it is recent laws change, I would say within the last maybe 2 years, that will allow you to transfer. One option you'll have is transfer from one beneficiary to another. So you have one child, excellent, academic, athletic, full ride, didn't have to pay anything, but the other child, not so much, didn't get all of that free aid. Then you can take those funds and move them over to the other child. Another option that you can look at, which is very exciting to me, is those funds can be converted into a Roth IRA up to a certain amount. So of course, this is something you want to talk to your advisor about. But yeah, those funds can be converted into a Roth IRA. Now, we're going to talk about Roth IRAs on the next slide, but a Roth IRA is a retirement saving / investing vehicle. So you can take those funds, and the child who didn't use the funds for education, those funds can now be converted into their retirement. And to me, that is a win-win. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. Oh, one other thing that if I can add this about 529s, because I know I said a mouthful. One thing, if I can add this, it to help you understand a little bit. So I do own a 529. I own two now. My experience is that they are very comparable to like your 401k plans that you have at work. So if you have a employer sponsored retirement plan, also known as a 401k or 403b, then it's pretty much the same. You can set your investment options up based on the level of risk that you're willing to take on, or you can set it up based on when the money will likely need to be used. For my kids, it's 20, get this guys, it's 2038 and 2040. So my investments are being my options are being invested at a rate based on having a lot of time to take on cyclical ups and downs of the market. So again, I'm not a financial advisor. This is in no way, shape, or form financial advice. This just is opportunity to learn more about the products and maybe look into investing in them for your own education. All right, let's talk other savings vehicles. And I just mentioned the Roth IRA. Remember, it is a type of retirement account. These contributions are taxed. So this is your after-tax money, but those earnings get to grow tax-free, and you don't have to pay taxes when it's time for you to withdraw the funds. Now, you can withdraw contributions tax and penalty free if you withdraw earnings before you are 59 and a half years old. Then you will have to pay taxes, and a 10% penalty is going to be waived if you're using those funds to pay for qualified education expenses. So there is kind of like a win there too, like, oh, okay, I can, I don't have to pay the taxes on this, or pay the penalty on this, I should say, if I'm using the funds for qualified education expenses. When you're applying for financial aid, you don't have to list retirement accounts as an asset. Remember, I talked about that student aid index. Retirement accounts is not an asset that they look at, but once you pull funds from that account, then you will have to count the funds that has been withdrawn as an asset. The tax benefits are also not as good as a 529, but it is another viable option. So that's why we mention it here. I would also say before using this option of withdrawing funds from a Roth IRA to pay for education, just remember why you opened that Roth in the first place, and it's likely for your own retirement. So don't neglect your own retirement goals. One of my colleagues, she said this so profoundly, and I tell this to people everywhere I go, and it is, you can borrow to pay for education, and we're going to talk about that shortly, but you can't borrow to pay for retirement. So it might not be in your best interest to pull funds from a retirement to pay for education when there are loans out there that can pay for education, but there are no such thing as retirement loans. Okay. All right, let's talk about the savings bonds. So the Series E, and I savings bonds is another option. These bonds increase in value monthly and they earn interest for 30 years. There is an education bond program, and it basically protects the interest earned on the Series E and I savings bonds from federal income tax, but you must meet the income and age guidelines, and the bonds must be registered in your name, and you must pay for the higher education expenses in that same calendar year when you redeem the bonds. Someone told me this was a good idea sometime during COVID. The rates were high, and I was like, okay, I'll open one. And honestly, I don't know a ton about these about this vehicle, about I know that a bond is basically a loan to a state or local government, a federal government. I do know you can go to treasurydirect.gov to open the account. I would say on your list of questions, maybe ask, what do you think about me purchasing a bond and using that to pay for education for my child? That can be on your list of questions to ask your advisor. And then finally, the zero coupon bond. Also, I don't have a ton of information. What I do know is that you can buy these bonds at a deep discount, and then you can redeem them for face value when they mature. So you're not necessarily like earning interest on these bonds, so to speak. It's like you're buying it for a discount in, let's say we're in 2024, and then maybe in 20 years, you are going to get the value, the face value of that bond, whatever it is in 20 years. Okay. So this might be another option to look into. There are no tax breaks, but again, if you're just looking for different vehicles, especially if you have income situations, challenges, like if you're a high earner and there's some vehicles that you're not going to be able to get into, then maybe that will be and serve as an option for you. All right, so financial aid is money supplied by one of these sources, government, the school, or a private entity, and they can provide aid in the form of scholarships and grants, other loans, or work study arrangements. They might be available to everyone based on a qualification. Most qualifications are like need-based or academic merit-based. Okay, so different types of aid sources, grants, loans, work study, scholarships, and they can come from all of these different entities, government, school, private, and I'm going to give you several more before we leave today. Michelle, we have to make sure everyone is still awake. I know they've been hypnotized by the sound of my voice. Can we go ahead and post the next poll question? It is true or false. I am familiar with the free application for federal student aid process. How many of you are or are not? It's okay if if you're not, you've never done it. Go ahead and vote very quickly. I'll take a quick sip.
All right, LauRae, about to post. We've definitely got everyone awake. Here we go.
Yay, I love it. Oh, I love these numbers too. Okay, 70% of you say you are familiar, 30% are not so familiar, and that's good. Good to know. So I am not going to deep dive into this, I promise. Well, I'm going to try not to, I should say. But I do want to talk a little bit about the federal financial aid process, especially because it has changed here recently. So even for those of you who are somewhat familiar, it could also be that you're familiar with the old process. So I'm just going to help you out with understanding how it works. And most of it, honestly, is not that new. But when it comes to federal financial aid, the process is not a one size fits all. So I've been talking about high earners. If you are a parent and you have high income, and you're a high earner, it is still good for you to apply, even if you think that you're not going to be eligible, just because there is not like a dollar amount. Like, you know how there are some programs that say, oh, if your income is more than $200,000, then you don't qualify. Federal financial aid is not based on income amounts. Okay. It is based on, however, things like we've kind of talked about, those custodial accounts, the 529s, the Coverdales, that sort of thing. So to apply for any federal grants, student loans, work study program, you will have to fill out the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. And you can go to studentaid.gov website in order to locate that application. The application must be renewed on an annual basis. And I always say, fill out that application as early as possible. The application opens on October 1st of each year. So this October 2024, it applies to students who will be entering college during the 2025-2026 school year. So you basically apply the year before the fall, in which they will actually start. If you missed the deadline, you're still encouraged to apply for the following year. And it is important to note that each state and educational institution, they have their own deadlines. So it is a good idea for you to research accordingly. If you're applying early and often annually each year, then kind of knowing those deadlines are not as important. So that's why I say October 1st is on its way. And I think Michelle mentioned that earlier today. So let's make sure that if you have a student who will be entering next academic school year 2025-2026, that on October 1st you are ready. You have all the information you need to complete that application. The application can be filled out electronically or it can be filled on paper. I think it just makes so much more sense to just do the electronic version, especially since they have how do I want to call this? It's basically a relationship with the IRS. So when it asks for tax information, you're able to use the tool that is going to automatically pull your tax information. So you don't have to go searching through your tax documents to figure out, okay, what was my adjusted gross income last year? No, you can just connect them with the IRS and that information will go directly to your application. After the FAFSA is sent to the school, their financial aid office develops an aid package. So again, it's not a one size fits all. You get an aid package for every school that is listed on the application. Each school's offering can be different. And since it's based on that particular school's costs, then they have some funds that might be available to your child directly from the school. When you do the application, the student will have up to 20 schools that they can send their information to, so you can receive an aid package back from them. If you do the paper application, you can only list 10 schools. Another reason why you should do the electronic version. Let's talk grants, and I can run through grants very quickly. I think grants are the best. Grants are funds, also called awards, that do not have to be repaid. The amount awarded is usually not high, and it's not going to necessarily cover all of the cost of education, but it can be helpful. I mean, I would say any little bit counts, right? The federal government offers a grant program, but most of the time grants are based on need. So the Pell Grant is probably one that you've heard before. It's the most common, and it is like a big share. So eligible students will be awarded their share of the big grant. Um, Another reason too why you should apply early, because you want to make sure you get your share. There's a such thing as running out of funds. Okay. Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant is not guaranteed, but students are awarded this grant based on the availability of the funds at the particular school that they plan to attend. And we're going to talk loans. So, Michelle, we can do this one really quickly. The poll question asks, do you know the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized federal loans? We'll do this one real quickly because I'm going to talk about them.
LauRae, you've got them engaged. Here we go with the results.
Nice, nice. Okay, great, great, great. So, let's see. Wow, we're kind of almost split down the middle. 37% say, yes, I get it. 30% I've heard, don't really quite get it though. And then 33% says, no, I don't know. And I'm going to do my best just to help you understand. So first of all, thank you guys for participating. Okay, first of all, federal student loans are an excellent way to finance higher education. They are easy to obtain. The interest rates are low, especially in comparison to, their private loan counterparts. And the repayment periods are long. So it doesn't put as much pressure on the student to have to repay a loan in a short amount of time. And just a quick reminder of the order for paying for college. Order for paying for college, you want to use free money first. So we just talked about grants. We talked about scholarships a little. We'll talk a little bit more. You want to use free money first. Then you want to use your money. So that Coverdale, the 529, any funds that you have put away for your child to go to school, that's next in the pecking order. Finally, you want to move to borrowed money like federal student loans. And if you are in a situation where you never have to touch federal student loans, then that's also a great situation to be in. But if you still need some, you need to cover the funds, you don't have enough to quite cover your expenses, then federal student loans are definitely a good option. They do come in two versions. You get a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. With a subsidized loan, basically the government is paying the interest on that loan as long as the student is enrolled at least half time. The student is satisfying whatever the academic standards are. So basically they can't just be in school flunking out, and up until graduation. So the government is going to pay the interest on those loans until the student actually leaves for whatever reason. All right. With an unsubsidized loan, it's just the opposite. The interest is accumulating and it starts to accumulate immediately. Now, while interest is accumulating, you can choose to pay the interest during that time while the student is in school. And it's not a bad financial strategy because it allows you to keep the loan amount to be the loan amount without the interest compounding and adding to the principal of the actual loan. Direct loans are the most common student loans, and they can be either subsidized if economic need is there, or unsubsidized. And again, this is why everyone should apply for on the FAFSA, because you never know what you will qualify for. Plus loans are for parents of students who wish to help pay for their child's education. You remember our earlier slide. The thing about a plus loan, though, is that you cannot have an adverse credit history. And when I say you, I'm speaking you, the parent. And the parent is expected to repay this loan. So if you have a plus loan and your child is an undergraduate student, that is actually now your student loan. It goes on your credit report, and it is not the responsibility of the child at all. Plus loans can also be used for graduate students who are planning to attend graduate school. And just a quick reminder, none of these loans are possible without completing the FAFSA application. So make sure you're doing it each year. Another thing about federal student loans, and I'll get off of this, I promise. Another thing about federal student loans is that the repayment options are more favorable. The maybe the opportunity for forgiveness exists, whereas if you are getting a private loan, it's probably the giving it forgiven is probably unlikely, and you might have a shorter window in which you need to pay that money back. What you should know about work study program is that this is another option for students who have economic need. They do provide jobs that will pay at least minimum wage to the student. They're usually offered, for me, I was able to choose to work in my field of study. So my work study job was, I was getting experience at the same time, which is really great. With the right work study program, your child can have work, if you will, but also do just that, work and study. So the work is not as strenuous. Like, they can do the work in the office. I was in an office that was, I was making copies sometimes, and sometimes typing up memos, that sort of thing. But I could also say, hey, boss, can I study for an exam that I have later today? And they were absolutely willing to allow me to do that. Work study is a great program. And a few other sources to consider. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. One is the military. Of course, almost all branches of the military has a number of college education financing options. AmeriCorps, with the AmeriCorps program, you can earn education awards in exchange for your service. Scholarships, okay. Scholarships, part of another reason, I guess I should say, why you should fill out the FAFSA application is because some scholarships base their criteria on what comes of the FAFSA. So that's another reason it might just why you should, do the FAFSA application, because it might open you up to more scholarship opportunities. Let's see, private student loans. We like to say private student loans, of course, they're not offered by the government. They have absolutely no association with the government, but we say that they're less favorable than the federal student loans for all the reasons I just told you about, like forgiveness and repayment options, that sort of thing. Cash out, refinance, home equity, or line of credit. As you know, if you own your home, and you also have equity in your home, then you could also tap into a line of credit. You can do a cash out refinance. You can do a home equity loan. Just keep in mind that this is also going to increase your mortgage payments. And if you can't keep up, then of course, your home is the collateral, and you could kind of lose your home. And that's not something that a situation that you want to be put in. And it's also important to just know about all the different tax breaks that are offered federally to those paying for higher education. Be sure to reach out to your tax professional to discuss how to best utilize these programs. The American Opportunity Credit is a credit for qualified education expenses paid for an eligible student for the first 4 years of higher education. Now, I got this information directly from the IRS's website, and it says you can get a maximum annual credit of $2,500 per eligible student. Do a little bit of research, talk to some of your professionals, and ask about the American Opportunity Credit. The Lifetime Learning Credit is for qualified tuition and related expenses paid for eligible students enrolled in an eligible education institution. Okay, again, ask about the Lifetime Learning Credit. And you might be eligible for a tax deduction if you are paying interest on any student loans. And as far as I know, they're still sending the education interest reports on that form 1098E. I've seen several of them in my lifetime. But you can learn more about those requirements by visiting the IRS's website. And in summary, I know we covered a lot today, and this subject can be somewhat stressful, especially the closer it gets to being your reality. So the first thing I would say is don't panic. You're armed with so much, and I hope I didn't give you too much information, but you are armed with so much information. We covered quite a bit, but some of our kind of takeaways that I want you to note is that planning early is the best plan. Even if you have $50 at the end of each month that you can save, put aside, maybe it's going into your ESA or your 529, regardless of what it is, that is an important contribution to your students' education. And keep in mind that there are a ton of programs out there that you can take advantage of to help you with aid assistance. The Department of Labor has a free scholarship search tool that you can use. And I'm gonna navigate to it in just a moment because I did pull it up on my system. They also provide ideas for locating both need and merit-based scholarships. One is the financial aid office at the college or career school that you or your child plans to attend. A high school counselor. Federal agencies offer scholarships. Your library's reference sections. Foundations, religious or community organizations, local businesses or civil groups. A lot of them have scholarships. My Alumni Association, really big on scholarships. If you are in a fraternity or sorority, maybe contact them about their scholarship program and see how your child can take advantage of some of those funds. Professional organizations as well. Ethnicity-based organizations, and your employer. That is also, and I might also have some programs that help with aid. And this is the website to show you real quick if you want to jot this down. It's careeronestop.org. And right now it says we found 9,616 awards. My goodness. Now, your child might not be eligible for each one of these, but you can use this keyword search, and you can lower this down to where you live, where you're going to study, the type of award. And I think it's an excellent resource. So if you didn't listen to a darn thing I said today because you said that lady is just talking too much, I would like for you to go to that Career Stop website. Okay. Okay, Michelle.
Oh my goodness. I
It's so
hope
much.
you were such a treat, LauRae. Thank you so much for all that information. I'm also going to rattle off some web addresses and resource sites that you mentioned also, but I did take note about this prepaid tuition plan. Definitely going to keep that in mind for my littles, but also your reminder about you can't borrow to pay for retirement, I think is such a valuable piece of advice. So thank you so much. If you don't mind going to our last slide, in the interest of time, I know there were some hand raised and some questions that our participants have too. Please email us questions at webinars@patelco.org. If you want to get connected to LauRae, we can get you connected to her that way.
Sure.
And we'll also try and answer any questions that you have. Did have a slide about balance, but I'm just going to say this. I mentioned in the beginning that there's such a valuable resource. We partner with Balance to partner with them to offer financial coaching for our members. So we do have certified financial specialists here at Patelco that you can reach out to. I myself am a certified financial counselor, and we can help with things like creating a budget or getting you on a savings plan or getting you on a debt reduction plan. But Balance, you want to consider them more as kind of a higher need counseling agency where they can do deeper credit counseling, where you can get information on student loan counseling. They're even HUD certified, so they even can do some housing counseling as well. LauRae had mentioned a couple important websites. Studentaid.gov was an important one. And then again, want to give you the address to contact us, and that's webinars@patelco.org. I think that covers most. LauRae, thank you so much. That was a webinar just chock full of great and important and valuable information, again, leading up to this financial aid season, again, that starts on October 1st. We'll welcome everyone back here in 2 weeks to talk about pre-retirement when Veronica Dangerfield returns. And then if you do have questions and want to get in touch with the Patelco representative, please visit us at one of our locations. We've also got a QR code on the screen to get connected with a live representative at our virtual branch. So LauRae, I hope this isn't the last time that our members get to hear from you. Thank you so much again for the valuable information, and we'll see everybody next time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. To hear more, subscribe or tune in to see the next video. See you next time.